This is the state of the nation. Ibifa Uganda. We are deliberate, we are reasonable, we are uncensored. The state of the nation with Henry Sully. Yes. Welcome to the State of the Nation with Henry Sully. I hope you're excited about this conversation. We continue to have this conversation widely, both in-house and outside. It's important for us to continue engaging in this conversation because we are all we have got. So the better we start early, the better for us and for our country. Today, I am going to delve into some of the issues pertaining to the sovereignty, the protection of the sovereignty bill. What is being said? Why is it being said? Most importantly, what is not being said? And why is it deliberately being left out? For those of you who have joined me already, please share the link, invite your friends. Let us delve into this conversation more deeply. My colleague, Council Isaac Semakade, is not well, so he's unable to join us today. Dr. Birete was also supposed to join us, but she has faced a few challenges and she won't be able to join us today. I hope to get them later on. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Please share this link with your colleagues so that we can engage more proactively and productively as well. So, across X, the question is blowing up. Is Uganda protecting its sovereignty or silencing its people? Today, I want to cut through the noise. The Protection of Sovereignty Bill 2026 is being flamed as a shield against foreign interference. But many critics are calling it a turning point for civic space, for free speech, and even what it means to be Ugandan, especially if you live abroad. From redefining foreign agents to expanding state power over who can speak, organize, or receive support. This is not just another policy debate. This is about power, participation, and the future of democracy. So I ask, do we reject it or do we rewrite it? So once again, welcome to this conversation that everyone is engaging in. But most importantly, tonight, I dig deeper. And I ask some of the questions that have not been posed yet. But I also delve into some of the answers that haven't been mentioned or talked about. And I hope by the end of this conversation, you will have picked out the good or the seemingly good from the bill, the bad and the ugly of the Protection of Sovereignty Bill 2026. So, let me begin with Simple but powerful question. What does it mean for a country to protect its sovereignty? Is it about defending borders? Is it about resisting foreign interference? Or is it about empowering its people to freely participate in shaping their future? Because depending on what your answer is, you will the chances are that you will arrive at two different conclusions about Uganda's Protection of Sovereignty Bill 2026. So I want to take this bill seriously, not emotionally, not politically, but constitutionally, democratically, and historically. Because this is not just another piece of legislation. This is a defining moment in Uganda's power dynamics, or how Uganda understands power. So why don't we try to break it down? And I know everything that has transpired or unfolded over the last couple of days, where we have seen the president of the country uh, distancing himself from the draft that was shared by the public. Um, in some cases, calling it kelele worldwide, right? I know that even his coming out was motivated by some of our taking this bill seriously, engaging online, engaging on Twitter, engaging on YouTube, engaging in the corridors of power, both in Uganda and abroad. In most cases, Mr. Museveni should have been named chameleon. And the folks who work for him closely should know him better. So for the colleagues who drafted the bill that has now been reframed as kelele or rwali, it doesn't come as a surprise. They should know that. They probably already know it. And this should be the time for them to pivot. And as they pivot, it is time for the public to also pivot. To reject or to modify? That is the question. So, what is the seeming good in this bill? And why was it brought along? Let us begin with intellectual honesty. There is a legitimate concern at the heart of this bill. Foreign interference is real. We have seen it in Venezuela. We have seen it happening in the Middle East. We see it happening in Zambia. And of course, for those who have been engaging in history, we know even the English we speak is a result of foreign interference. We see it across the world. At the core, external funding shapes domestic politics. NGOs influence policy agendas. Of course, digital platforms amplify misinformation. And foreign governments quietly steer outcomes in weaker states. So no serious country ignores this. And Uganda, given its history, colonial, post-colonial, geopolitical, Uganda has every reason to be vigilant. So when the bill says we want to protect sovereignty, that is not in itself controversial. In fact, it is necessary. The idea that foreign actors should not manipulate elections, national policy should not be outsourced, that funding should be transparent. In that sense, the bill is reasonable and objective. And in fact, it starts, I think that opens up a state of legitimacy for the bill. But in its critical state, at this moment in time, sometimes good intentions do not make good law. Because the question is not, should Uganda protect its sovereignty? The question is how and at what cost? So let me delve into what I think is potentially the bad in this bill. Specifically where the bill begins to drift. And this is where the bill begins to unravel. No, not in its intentions, but in its design. The reason, the real reason why the president came out and said that this is not the bill that he advocated for, right? The notion that it is not what he intended to send in, even though it came out after several weeks when people were talking about it and challenging it, even though the president came out after the governor Bank of Uganda dismissed the bill, after majority of Ugandans came to dismiss the bill. I think what we need to do is to give him credit for coming out, even late, because better late than never sometimes makes more sense than not coming out at all. So let us delve into the definitions problem. At the core of the bill is the definition of a foreigner. And here lies the major flaw, the very first major flaw, because the definition includes non-citizens, foreign governments, and international organizations, but also critically, Ugandan citizens living abroad. Let that sink in. Ugandan citizens living abroad. And that includes a Ugandan studying in Canada, one working in London and sending money from the US. All those Ugandans, or by law, if this law goes as is, all those Ugandans are classified as foreigners. And by extension, they could be treated as an agent of foreign influence. This is not a minor drafting issue. This is a philosophical rupture, because it says your citizenship is no longer enough. It says your distance from the state determines your legitimacy. And in doing so, it transforms diaspora Ugandans from participants in sovereignty into subjects of suspicion. Imagine that. Now, let us unpack the power problem. And this is the moment we move deeper. Who enforces the bill? Who decides who a foreigner is? Who decides who an agent is? What activities are permissible? Who may receive funding? Who may operate? The bill in its current form is clear. The Minister of Internal Affairs, one office, one appointed official, with sweeping power to define categories, approve or deny registration, set conditions, revoke permissions at any time. This is not regulatory oversight. This is discretionary control. And as Philip Kalugaba argued in his remarks, in his parliamentary submission, this bill does not protect sovereignty, it displaces it. Plain and simple. Because sovereignty under Article 1 of the Constitution belongs to the people. But this bill transfers the practical exercise of that sovereignty into the hands of the executive. That is not protection. That is centralization. And this is something we need to delve into seriously as Ugandans. This is something we need to unpack carefully. Because if we don't, someone is doing it for us. Right? So how about the speech problem? Here we arrive at one of the most troubling provisions. The bill suggests that influencing the public to oppose government policy may be criminal. Think about that. What are we doing right now? Like, engaging in this kind of conversation, putting face to opinions is going to be criminalized. Think about that. Yet what we are really doing is analyzing, we are questioning, we are opposing. In a democracy, that is not a crime. That is citizenship. The Constitutional Court has already affirmed. The free flow of information and ideas is essential to democracy because without it, there is no accountability, there is no debate, there is no sovereignty. So, if this bill is passed as is, we could as well remove the parliament. Because what happens in parliament? We assume that our legislators are going to keep our government accountable, our government institutions accountable. We assume that in government, there must be debate. And we assume that by freely debating on issues and offering our opinions, we are preserving our self-determination, our self-sovereignty. So if a citizen cannot criticize the government, then sovereignty no longer belongs to them. And that is troubling. We just finished an election recently. This month, people are going to be sworn in. So why don't we interrogate the election contradiction? Mr. Museveni's bill claims to protect elections, but at the same time, it defines agents of foreigners so broadly that it could include election observers, civic educators, journalists, and media houses. These are not threats to elections. These are guarantors of credibility. So we are left with a contradiction. A law that claims to protect democracy while restricting the very mechanisms that make democracy possible. The so-called Protection of Sovereignty Bill. Thank you for reposting, Stella. And I hope we are engaging seriously in this conversation. I hope other people can also share. If you would like to join the studio, comment yes, and then I'll give you some details on how to connect with me. And then I'll share the link so that you can join me in studio to have a more comprehensive conversation about the Protection of Sovereignty Bill. So, the economics of this bill is really what has brought the government to respond, specifically the current occupier of the presidency, to come out and distance himself from the bill that we are discussing today. And of course, he offered his own suggestions or revisions. So we cannot take the governor's contribution to this conversation lightly. In fact, some of us are glad that he did not just ask for exemption. He came out and laid out the actual impacts of this bill if passed in its current state. But then there's also another ugly part of this bill where it leads us, right? And I think we should now be honest about that trajectory, because laws like this one do not exist in isolation. We have seen them before. We have seen them in Russia. We have seen them in Hungary. We have seen them in Georgia. They all begin the same way. We are protecting sovereignty. And then boom, they evolve. They become surveillance mechanisms of the civil society at large. They restrict funding for non-profit organizations and other folks. Most importantly, they stigmatize dissent. And in most cases, they also lead to closure of independent organizations. And that's usually just the beginning, because they eventually also silence people. Not enforced silence, but self-censorship. Where people hesitate to contribute, to participate in these kinds of conversations. You will see journalists hesitate to contribute or to investigate certain institutions for fear of being reprimanded or isolated or sought after. NGOs often withdraw. Citizens become conscious, not because they are guilty, but because the law is either vague or draconic in nature. And that, my friends, is the real danger. Not just the mass arrests, but the quiet shrinking of public life. How about the consequences, the diaspora consequences? Think about Ugandans in abroad. Think about you and I. Think about how much money, the remittances, the billions of remittances that we send back home to support families, to build schools, to fund community projects. Under this bill, these funds could be restricted. Even when the president came out and said that those were not something to be talked about, or the bill shouldn't touch the remittances or the funds to the churches, right? Despite those conversations or those assertions from the president, our participation is going to be scrutinized. Our voices are going to be delegitimized, as if we are no longer stakeholders. This bill turns us into suspects. But that is economically reckless. It is socially divisive and constitutionally questionable. This is why it is important for us to continue having these conversations, because if we don't, no one is going to come and speak for us. We must continue speaking, even at the risk of being isolated or reprimanded or being sought after. We must continue speaking. We can't stop now. And a few things are happening at Uganda's political theater. Things that are being said jokingly that could potentially manifest in a couple of months or years to come. The idea that Mr. Museveni and his government prefers certain people to be the leaders in our country, that some people should not be thinking about certain leadership roles. This bill, beyond fighting the opposition, beyond pursuing rational voices like that of Dr. Stella Nyanzi, like that of Isaac Semakade, like that of Dr. Birete, like that of Kakwenza Lukirabasaija. This bill is coming after the stooges of government. Conversations have been happening all over. And there are speculations that this bill could potentially also be coming after Anita Among. Because why? Because Anita Among has become so rich and they are unsure of where she's getting her riches, her wealth. She's not just so rich, she has also taken over the NRM establishment despite having come from the opposition. They say Anita Among has infiltrated the NRM establishment. No wonder the likes of Norbert Mao have been brought along to stand against him. And even when that might be seen as a joke, even when most of us think, I've initially thought that Mr. Mao is just strategically positioning himself to maintain his position as Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. There is a real threat from Anita Among that is potentially being managed, and that she's going to have to accept on certain conditions to stay in that position, in her position, current position. They think that if she becomes speaker again, given the amount of money that she's getting from abroad, or I don't know where she's getting it from, but yeah, if it's true that she's getting most of her money from abroad, and if it's true that this bill is also created to control her better than she's being controlled now, then when that time comes, they can use this very bill after she has passed it to incarcerate, to put her in prison. If she tries to take over the NRM using the money similar to what she used during her SEC campaigns, outspending the former Speaker of Parliament by more than 5 times and winning her by over 80%. This bill, beyond fighting the opposition, it's also fighting the stooges of the regime, those who might be ambitious, who might be thinking about elevating themselves beyond where they are right now. This bill is coming for you to So as you plan to pass any sort of bill, if you choose not to reject it, remember that you may not be part of the royal family, and they could come for you anytime. So let me be clear. My opinion is that this bill must be rejected. Uganda has the right, indeed the duty, to protect itself from undue foreign influence. But this bill, in its current form, it does not achieve that balance. Instead, what it does is expand definitions beyond reason. It concentrates power without safeguards and criminalizes legitimate civic activity, such as this one. It also undermines constitutional principles, and it risks shrinking democratic space. This is not a matter of minor amendments. This is a matter of structural design. And when a law contradicts the Constitution, when it centralizes sovereignty, when it restricts participation, it cannot simply be tweaked. It must be rejected, not out of defiance, but out of fidelity to the Constitution, to democracy, and to the people. Because sovereignty is not something the state grants. It is something that people already possess. And any law that forgets that, it must be sent back. Uganda does not need less participation in the name of sovereignty. It needs more sovereignty through participation. Thank you. I'm happy to engage more people if they want to join me. I haven't seen any comments, links, your thoughts. There's a couple of people watching, but I don't know what you're thinking. Those are my thoughts. Think about them. If you want us to engage more in these kinds of conversations, I'm open to having a conversation. For now, I dropped the mic. This is the state of the nation. Irifa Uganda. We are deliberate, we are reasonable, we are uncensored. The state of the nation with Henry Salah.